Hey, everybody on the nest. Hi. Guess what? I'm here with best-selling author Scott Reintgen. He was like, "Can I come hang out in the nest?" And I was like, "Sure, absolutely." It
I
was
it's
about that casual,
it's a
actually.
cool place to hang out. I wanted in. I wanted in the nest.
Scott, this is the fourth or fifth time we've chatted. It's been a few chats.
We've gotten to know each other. It's been great. I want everyone to know that before this aired or anything like that, we just hopped in the room and just fell to chatting because when you just get to catch up, it's kind of fun. And being in this industry, it's kind of just nice to have folks that make you comfortable. And Jordan is someone who makes, I think, all authors pretty comfortable.
Thank you. And also before when we were talking, you mentioned our industry, and I was like, "Oh my goodness, it's mine now too." That was like a personal revelation to me. Um,
Absolutely, absolutely.
I love hanging out with you, Daddy Scott.
Oh, no, I knew it was coming up. When I shared this on Twitter, I was like, maybe we'll have one or two less references to the word daddy this time around, but I guess it started early. So,
Yes, because it'll just be one because it's not in this book.
that's true. There is
But the
no.
reference to that came from Ash Lords,
Yes.
and it was a very funny joke once upon a time. So for any OG watchers of Scott, you got the one reference.
Yeah.
But tonight we're here to talk about A Door in the Dark. Y'all, we've needed a good wizard book for a couple of years now. And that's what we have. Scott, most people may know you from your best-selling Nixia series, as well as Ash Lords. But with this book, you've done a deep dive, not into sci-fi, but into fantasy.
Yes.
And it's so much fun.
Yeah, thank you for that. I think it was kind of refreshing in many ways. Nixia has a very distinct competitive element to it. Ash Lord centers around a Phoenix horse racing competition, so competition is central. And this, I would say, in some ways, it's kind of weird to say because it's not what I published for my first 8 books, but it was me getting back to what I kind of fell in love with when I first started writing, which is wizards and schools and dark magic and weird spells and all of those sort of cross sections. And so, yeah, it was definitely me kind of returning home, and it was a place that I felt super comfortable. And hopefully, the reader can kind of feel that as I kind of dig into the story.
With A Door in the Dark, though, it's almost like the ultimate series of unfortunate events.
Yes, yes, it is. I mean, it truly. So the way I pitched the book, really. Should I pitch the book? Can I pitch the book real quick?
No, you're not allowed to pitch the book.
Okay, well, you'll never know what this book's about. You just have to buy it based on whether or not you think that cover is beautiful, and I think the answer is yes. No, so A Door in the Dark, it's about these 6 wizards who are taking the public portal home. Their winter break has hit. They're ready to go home from school. So think school bus, but without well, for magic people, right? And so they go to this one room and they're on their campus. They all light a candle. They all take a seat. And what is supposed to happen, what has happened hundreds of times, is that they teleport home. A teleportation spell goes off. Everyone gets whisked back to their individual neighborhoods, safe and sound. But this time, a fight breaks out. An argument has kind of bubbled up to the surface, and it finally spills over. And so, while fists, punches are being thrown and spells are being cast, that teleportation spell still is timed, so it goes off. And so, in the midst of all that chaos, instead of being taken back to their individual neighborhoods, they're all dropped out in the middle of nowhere in the wilderness. And one of them is dead on arrival. And so, yeah, I mean, obviously things have to go wrong. I'm not, I've talked about this before, I think, but I'm not a malicious author. I'm not setting out to be who can I kill next? That's never been quite my thing. But as Robin Hobb says, Robin Hobb says, I don't kill my characters make mistakes. And what happens is there are some mistakes to be made in this book. And it's not easy to survive when you have little magic on you, and no resources and no food, and you're crossing a mountain chain. Not to mention a variety of other things kind of pop up along the way that are issues, including the secrets of all the people involved. So yeah, series of unfortunate events. Also, just like tough sledding all around, even if you were the best of wizards, which Ren Monroe kind of is.
Now, Ren is, I don't know, an anti-chosen one.
Yeah, to a
Yeah.
degree. Yeah, that's a fair. I've
Yeah,
never.
Ren makes herself the chosen one, and I think that that's what I like the most about Ren as a character. Um, Most of the time when you get high fantasy, you do get very damsel in distress, and Ren is not that. Ren is terrifying.
Yeah, yeah, you should quake a little bit as you read her. She's not a comfortable read sometimes because she, early on, I would kind of pitch it as like if Hermione had a really bad dark side to her, like a cunning nature that just kind of pushes the envelope. And Ren Monroe's that. Ren Monroe is not comfortable for some readers, and I think that's intentional because if you're not the chosen one, and if you don't have the resources and you don't know what to do and you can't do anything, uh, you kind of just have to force your way in between the cracks of existence and make room for yourself. And Ren Monroe does that and is that person, and has a reason for everything she's doing, but she will not be forgotten. She will not be left aside. She will not be the one who kind of like says, yeah, sure, my fate's just to be kind of average and normal, because she's not average and she's not normal.
No, and she is a character that doesn't shy away from the idea that the means justify the ends.
It's true. It's true. I mean, again, like there's backstory involved to it. There's reasons behind what she's doing, but she is definitely willing to be cutthroat when needed. In part because she knows that the system she's facing is like way bigger than her, and so if it's so stacked against her, there's just only so much she can take without having to do those things. And in her case, sometimes the means do justify the ends.
It's true. Now let's talk a little bit about the world building, because this isn't magical realism. This is a fully actualized fantasy world. And there's like dark academia vibes going on, which I very much like. It's very like secret society, upper echelon academy that everybody's attempting. There's not very much of it because it almost immediately jumps right into the action. And it does that through possibly one of the more unique transportation systems I've read about in a novel in a while. And you can see it on the book. And I really don't think that this is a spoiler.
No, it's not. No, yeah.
But if you see, folks, and I don't have the really fancy cover, but you see all the little candles? People travel by candles. The Wizard uses candles as a transportation system.
Yeah, the waxway system. It's like
what inspired that?
I have had a candle travel magic in my brain. It's one of those ideas that sat on my phone for years. After I don't know what iPhone number I'm on at this point, but it's been on every version of my iPhone that I've had. As soon as I had a reminder section in the iPhone, it was there. So I've always thought about it, but actualizing it, making it something that was like a logical system that offered a boost in transportation, but had its limitations, had its dangers, and those dangers pop up pretty quickly in this one. The waxway system, I just thought it fit this world like a glove, because Ren takes you, she's the perfect main character for it. I think she takes you into this magical world that is very much like, this does this and this does this, and if you know this spell and this law and you apply it this way, it should do this. And there's unpredictability to it, but for the most part, it's like this very like, hey, the typical waxway candle that's this long is going to take you a day's travel that way, and if you have one that's this long, it's going to take you 2 days travel. And so it's just one of those things that it was fun to develop that, and it was also fun to like make it the main vehicle for the conflict, which is that in the midst of their waxway travel that we get to witness, it all goes horribly wrong.
Like very badly wrong. And magic has a cost in your world, but a very specific cost. And I appreciate that, because there's going to be absolutely no way of working around that. Once you're out, you're out. And it's a system called Oxley's. And the interesting thing is that just like here now, you have people with a little and you have people with a lot.
Yes, and Rin faces that even as a student, even with like a slight boost, on her monthly sort of allotment. She still is someone who's like counting every single spell, right? And so she's trying to figure it out. She takes her mom's magic each month. Her mom gets a certain amount, and her mom kind of just doesn't use magic, so she kind of takes that with her each month as well. But for her, it's like, hey, I've got this budget that I am sticking to every single day, every single week. And then you have the Theo Broods of the world who are like, I'm gonna charm, at my party, I'm gonna, make the ice cubes turn into ballerinas at the bottom of your cup just because it's fun. And so there's this kind of incredible imbalance. And at her first party that we see, it's like chapter 3 or chapter 4, Rin is just like seething as she sits on the couch and looks at all this wasted magic just dripping from the walls of this room. And she's like, I can't do any of those things. Not until I'm positioned, not until I'm in one of these houses and have a bigger allotment monthly. And so her goals are pretty tied to that fact that just in her current station, there are massive limitations.
It's funny you said that because classism and parallels to modern capitalism are forefront in all of your stories. And I want to know why.
Yeah.
Is it so that folks can relate?
That's accurate. I don't think it's intentional. I think it's Nick Stone and I talked about this one time. You end up writing a lot of what bothers you. You just do. You write things that just stick in your throat. You write things that keep tapping you on the shoulder. And a lot of, I'll visit a lot of schools, right? So I visited probably 600 schools in the last 6 years since Nixia came out, right? So I'm there a lot. And a lot of students, I think, charged and pushed by teachers will say, do you have themes in your story? Like, do you know them ahead of time? And I always am like, no, I never intend or plan to write about something like that. But as I write the story and as I realize who Rin is and what her position is in the society, I realize like I'm rooting for her against everybody else. Even if, some readers find her a little unlikable at times, I am on her team because she has been dealt an unfair hand, and that hand has been dealt to her every month for her entire life. And so I feel like that's just one of those topics that just like sits uncomfortable in my gut. And if I don't wrestle with it on the page, I don't know what's the point of me writing stories at all. I don't know. So yeah, I try to dig into that when I can.
You make such a good point. What's the point of writing stories?
Yeah, I'm gonna hang up the pen if I can't do that. No, I'm just kidding. I mean, there's so many reasons. I mean, like obviously we want to invite you into wonder, and I want you to feel like you're in a magical world. But underlying all of that is definitely like things in this world that bother me that I need to wrestle with on the page for sure.
It's fun because it's classically Scott Reintgen in that way, because there are similar themes in Ashlords for sure. And there are similar themes in Nixia, absolutely. I mean, that's the whole premise of the plot, right?
Right.
So, I mean, fans of your work, they're going to know that they're going to get a classic Scott Reintgen story in an upper YA high fantasy. It's perfect.
Yeah,
That's the formula, Scott.
Well, see, that's the thing. I kind of hope every time you walk into my story, I think I've heard V. Schwab talk about this before. She talks about how she just wants you to kind of feel. It's almost like you can kind of smell like the familiar scent of our breath, or you hear the familiar tenor of my voice, right? I do want you to feel like, oh, I know within the first 2 pages this is a Scott Reintgen book. But I kind of also want you to feel I'm always inviting you into something a little bit new, because I do. I expand out pretty. I mean, 10 kids launching into space, people riding on Phoenix horses, and now like dark academia lost in the woods. Like those are very, like there's a couple threads obviously that tie that together, but they're very different stories set in very different worlds. And a part of that is just like I'm attracted to so many different types of stories. I don't want to be beholden to any one thing. And then the other part of it is I do hope that my readers still feel like they get that comfortable, like, okay, I know Scott's leading me somewhere good. because I take pride in that as well.
You should, because it's apparent. I have to ask this one, and I changed it a little bit. I'm sorry, Anna, but I changed this a little bit. We love dragons. All of us, the entire nest, we all love dragons, period. I am comfortable making that statement. So I'm thrilled to see them as like the purveyors of magic in this book, or people assume that they are, especially as they seem to take the place of like dinosaurs as a fuel for the wizards in many ways.
Yes.
Was that what inspired that? Because I had very like extinction, dinosaurs fueling us.
Jordan, I'm getting the understanding through this brief conversation we're having that you're smarter than me. And I'm cool with that. And I just need to bring you in earlier in the process so I have better answers when people ask me things. Because no, I did not.
You're like, no, I didn't think of that.
No, I didn't. That's great though. And I'll steal it for every other conversation I have with anyone about the book. You know, I definitely, you know, I love dragons. I always joke that if a dragon or a spaceship shows up, I'm probably going to have a good time in your book. But for dragons, I know, like it's one of those things. I love to take that familiar concept and just kind of twist it a little bit, right? And so all the dragons in my world are dead. That doesn't mean that they're not involved though. It doesn't mean that they aren't like still participant in some ways. And so like, you know, early on in the story, there's a hallucinogenic that people use because that's like the best way for them to, you know, kind of experience some enjoyable recreational activities is to, they kind of like use the corpses of dragons and like get the like stuff coming off of them and funnel it into a drug basically. And there's all kinds of different ways it pops up. And the waxways themselves, the way that wizards currently travel around were essentially built and formed by dragons. So like, yeah, I love the concept. I'm trying to think of who does this. Like Lies of Lockelamora has some of this where it's like you're clear, like people are existing in something that someone left behind, right? And so they can use it and they kind of get how some of it works. But then there's a few moments where like someone just dies randomly and they're like, should have sent HR in there earlier. Like, sorry, that didn't work out quite the same way we expected it to. So I love when you get like a technology that's super useful, but it's not 100% foolproof because it's not yours technically.
No, and technically the wizards in the novel don't quite understand how the waxways work.
No, they like have figured out how they can survive the waxways. And Rin describes it that way. She's like, look, the candle that you're burning down, the magic you're using, that spell, it's like a cocoon, right? And it's hiding your scent long enough that you can travel through the waxways and nothing eats you, essentially. And when she says that to the other like 4 survivors, they're all like, please don't share any more information with us. We'd like to, you know, have a chirpier, like kind of more positive attitude from here on out.
So I have to ask, because this is going to be a series.
Mm-hmm.
And I said that very confidently, not knowing whether it was a series, because there is quite like that.
It's a series. It is
a series. Scott's like, I guess it is now.
Yeah. My publisher on the line, quick.
Because I wouldn't say that it ends on a cliffhanger, but you like it ends with you going, what in that?
Yes.
You know, so I want to know, are we going to explore the waxways further in other books? Okay, so my curiosity is going to be
yes.
Okay.
Your curiosity will be met. And then the beauty of getting a book 2 is it's kind of like you said, you know, we get this like rich academia, magic, like spell systems, and we get like 4 chapters of that really before I'm like, sorry, y'all. I hope you didn't find it too fascinating because we need to get lost in the woods real quick. And so because of that, I did want to get back to exploring magic and politics and all that exists in those worlds. And that's what book 2 definitely allows me to do. Rin, you know, I mean, it's one of those things where I wanted to make sure I'm keeping the thread of what I think people will love in book 1. But I also am opening several doors that make this story feel brand new as well. But yes, there will 100% be a book 2. And book 3 is kind of like, It's kind of up in the air. I'm under contract for more books with this publisher, but they were really, really taken with a particular standalone concept of mine. So like whether or not I end up working on a book 3 or that one first is kind of up in the air.
Awesome. I'm just happy that I'll have more in this universe. Because those first few chapters with her professor, his name escapes me.
Professor Ahura.
Thank you. There is a really fun philosophical query he has about swords between Marcus and Rowan. And I feel like that will live rent-free in my head forever.
Thank you. That is that's a real myth, by the way. That
is it
like
really? So we can tell everybody what it is.
Look up the story of Masamune. It's wonderful. It's beautiful. So I haven't gotten to talk about this much because it just hasn't come up. This story, its bones, right? The origin of it comes from the very first thing I tried to get published and failed to get published, and just like
really?
boatload of rejections for. And looking back, like I know that story was pretty weak. I know what I did with the parts and the pieces was not excellent execution by any means. But Erin Monroe existed in that story, and she told that same story, like she told that story in that version. And so like bones of what that story was have survived, and I've kind of breathed new life into them. And obviously too, like I've had 9 published books since then, and I've had 22 total manuscripts that I've finished since then. So like I've gotten better, right? And so that first version, like I'm so glad y'all never got to read it. I'm so glad. And the fact that this is the version you get, and that story and that myth worked it in, and it's such a better way to the story and is so much more meaningful. Like all of those things are just significant and matter a lot to me. I'm hopeful that anyone out there who's like trying to like get published or anything like that, just know like, and it can be a cliche, but nothing is wasted. Nothing is ever wasted.
It's cool that you keep things in your back pocket to use later.
Yeah.
You saved it knowing that even after those rejections, you were going to succeed and get published.
I go back and mine through it. Like I'll read back through stuff, and I'm like, it's what's cool about it. And hopefully this is also like a hopeful thing to anyone out there who wants to write too. Like you go back through and you're like, oh, that's a bad chapter, but then you come across like an idea and you're like, that is still a great concept, or like, wow, I cannot believe, like there's one scene in that original story that like I can't wait to find a home for it. It's a beautiful, beautiful scene. The 4 chapters around it are all pretty dreadful, but that scene was pretty good. So yeah.
Book 2. We'll hang on to that. Hopefully next year.
Yes.
So because it starts out as a fun, dark academia book, you think that you're going to be hanging out in a wizard world, and then suddenly these kids are transported. I shouldn't say kids. They're more like college age, upper teen, early
18,
college.
19. Yeah.
They get dumped in this forest, and suddenly it becomes a thriller.
Yes.
And this book is in some ways like a monster thriller fantasy.
That's fair. Yeah.
It's the classic chase.
Yes.
And I'm trying really hard not to spoil this book.
I can tell. You're like tiptoeing through all of it. I love it.
But it's chock full of like pop culture references, masquerading as like high fantasy allegories. Did you know that you were going to be interjecting this like fun monster mayhem when you first developed the story, like way back when? Or did that develop over time?
As soon as they were lost, right? As soon as they got lost in the woods, and it's not a spoiler because like it's the first chapter. The first chapter, they wake up and there's a body on the forest floor, right? So it's not a spoiler at all. But as soon as I figured out they were lost, I had to I like rooted through what they would be facing. Because I knew that they would be facing each other. They all have secrets. They all have things they don't want the other people to know about. They all have their kind of like hidden skeletons and different motivations. So I knew there'd be this inherent conflict between them. I also knew that like naturally, it's just hard to survive a mountain chain. Like there's a reason I have not hiked Everest. I'm not up to that task. And so like I knew that natural element would present itself, but I also kind of knew that I wanted, you know, we're in a land of magic, we're in the land of fantasy, and it's hard to like you don't, it's like leaving like the best tool in your tool shed on the shelf if you just go with they're going to fight a lot, and also there's like mountain issues. So I wanted to shove the story into that direction, and I had to kind of figure out what would pick up the scent, right? If you get 5 wizards dropped in the woods and one of them's dead, what's coming their way? And what I decided on eventually, and what you'll find out eventually, is like I think one of my favorite antagonists I've ever had. So yeah, excited about that.
A really scary one, and it's actually one that you do not see coming.
I
I'm going
appreciate
to
that.
you don't. Okay.
You don't.
I've been reading books
You
for a
don't.
very long time. And even I was like, oh, I see what you did there. So you're not gonna figure it out. Sorry, guys.
Yeah,
I
I
mean,
try.
tell me that I'm
I've
wrong.
always one thing I do pride myself on a lot. I learned this early on that as you're almost like a low end magician as a writer. You don't want your plot twists to feel like they came out of left field for no reason. What they should feel like is, hey, you should have seen that coming, but I had this little shiny ribbon in my left hand and I drew your eyes to it like 5 times, and you just stared at that ribbon at all the right moments where you couldn't see what was going on in my other hand, and that's why you missed it. And so I take great pride in that. That's something that I care a whole lot about. I want you to feel that moment where you like rock back and you have to set the book down for a second and be like, you got to be kidding me. How did I not see it coming?
Because at the end, you can literally walk your way back through the book at every single point, and I love that so much.
Yeah.
But I also loved that throughout the challenges with everybody in this mountainous area, a lot of the solutions that the group had to come up with, while magical, were also very scientific.
Thank you. I am not like super smart in terms of science, which is hilarious because my debut was a sci-fi young adult novel. I had a lot of sciencey friends who helped me with that.
Do you
But
remember our panel with Christopher Paolini?
oh yeah,
Remember at certain points where we were all just sitting there like,
he's way smarter than
absolutely,
me.
sir, whatever you say.
I'm cool with that. I told you before the call, I was talking to Jordan. I said my very first panel was with Cory Doctorow. So this is like a super sidebar, and he's a very smart human being, right? Incredibly smart. If you ever listen to like 30 minutes of him talking, you're like, wow, I am a writer and I don't know 12 of those words he just said. But one thing that I did, I never shared this with anyone before that panel, because I was so scared. It was my first panel ever. I like read up about him and like watched a couple of his interviews, and I figured out one of his talking points and how to frame it more in my voice. And I used that talking point. And then on the panel, he looked over and he goes, I agree with Scott on this one. And I was like, yes. So that was my favorite moment of pretending that I'm smarter than I am. But yes, so
Smart.
sorry. And back to the science element. I think one thing I really wanted to do with their magic system, because I knew I was taking you away from the classroom. I was taking you away from Balmeric University, which I knew a lot of readers would crave. And Rin is like a walking textbook. And so she brings that education, that academia with her. And yes, a lot of her solutions are particularly dynamic. My favorite one, again, this doesn't spoil anything, is the one at the river. Like that is my favorite piece of magic I've ever done. And I've been waiting to sneak that magic into a story forever. And Rin was the perfect person for it. But yeah, so I think approaching it as like magic as problem solving and as something that like, if it was the core of society, I think we would figure out so many more ways to use it than just like muttering a couple words and hoping our like dinner gets cooked the right way. I feel like we would use it in so many unique ways. And this book hopefully explores that a lot.
And it does. One of the cool things as well, we had mentioned earlier, it's your book, that they have a limited amount of magic. So all of these kids are dumped in the forest with whatever magic they have on their person. And that's all they get to survive their way back to civilization.
And it's awkward too at the start because like they have to have the conversation where they're like, how much you got? Like, how much do you have on you? And most of them do not have much. One of them because he's like lazy and forgot to refill his wand. But for the most part, the group, it's almost like talking about money or politics at the dinner table. Like you're kind of like, are you supposed to say this? But they have to bring it up because they're like, look, we're surviving like 7 or 8 days across a mountain chain. Like, what happens if I run out of magic and I can't refresh the spells at night? You need to know how to do that kind of thing.
And what happens if something happens to them, because you also cannot share magic in this world.
Yes.
So it's like it's almost like a game of like survivalist chess.
And certain people become pretty valuable because you're like, if we lose him or we lose her, we don't have any of this anymore. And so it is this kind of awkward thing where it's like they don't display that. They're not like, I'm trying to care for you more than this person, but secretly each of them kind of knows where their bread is buttered, and they have to keep those people alive and well and also happy with the group if they want them to kind of like survive all together.
In writing that, that quest, I guess, that race, it's more of a race. Was there a particular character that you enjoyed writing more than the others? Was it Ren?
Ren, it's kind of always the MC a little bit. Like the protagonist is so fun. We just spend so much time with them that I have to have them down so well. I have to know them so well because they are the sun and all my other pieces orbit around them. And I do try those tricks where it's like, yeah, everyone thinks they're the main character of their story. And I want to dig into that. I want to make sure that you feel like these are people who are living their own lives as well. But Ren's the life you get to follow, right? She's the one you get to see through her eyes. So she was definitely the most fun. And then I love a role like Timmons. So Timmons is one of Ren's best friends at the school, and she is also like Ren. She's not someone. She's a scholarship student, so she's not from a rich or wealthy family. But unlike Ren, she has this unique like genetic quality that she is an enhancer. And so, unlike the rest of the wizards around her, one of her main skill sets is that her mere existence, her mere channeling herself near someone powers magic to be more intense or more vibrant or more anything. And as you think about these houses that have existed and they've learned all these spells over the years, and most of them kind of know each other's secrets to some degree, having that one person who can boost your spells more than someone else's spells, very valuable. And so I kind of, almost from like a D&D type perspective, it's kind of fun to have that character who provides this very unique skill that like she just literally was born with. It's not like she grew up and learned it. It's not like she like figured out a way to do it. Just fate dealt her a card that made her instantly valuable, even though she kind of scorns and scoffs at some of the people who think she's valuable.
It's true. I'm sorry, I'm stuck on Dungeons and Dragons, and then I'm thinking like this is definitely a D&D campaign if you were in a room full of people who really didn't want to play.
Yeah, no, that's exactly it. It's like the worst D&D campaign you've ever been invited to. That's exactly right. That's exactly right.
And actually, yeah, no, there's a lot of characters and a lot of like fantasy elements that pull from Dungeons and Dragons. Scott, are you a D&D player?
I never knew it was a thing. If I had been invited to play D&D in high school, I 100% would have. For sure. But I just didn't know it was a thing. So I think I got to like late college before someone was like, yeah, we're doing D&D tonight. And I was like, is that like B for D, like breakfast for dinner? Like, what's that? And they were like, no, like Dungeons and Dragons. I was like, go on. What is that? And so I've participated in one campaign in my life and realized very quickly that I wanted to be the writer of the campaign. And then I just started writing books. So that worked out okay.
I feel like you would be an excellent DM.
Oh, I would love it. I would create so many fun scenarios for y'all. Oh, I would love it.
We should make this a thing. I think
we
that
just started it.
I know you
We're
have books, right? Family and stuff, but like this needs to happen. So.
This is happening. It's already happening. It started tonight.
Also, I saw the new movie today.
I haven't seen it yet. I haven't seen it yet.
I won't spoil it for you, but it's a heck of a lot of fun.
Good. Okay. All right. I'm in.
Um, I know that you have already said that you've taken like scenes from your previous books and you kind of just insert them if they're great. Is there any scene in A Door in the Dark that you were going to put in Nixia or Ashlords?
Ooh, that's really interesting. There's a speech. There's a speech. Yeah, not to spoil anything, but later on in the story, there's a speech by someone, by Theo, that is lifted from a speech that I didn't get to use in Nixia because one of the characters who was going to give that speech changed so drastically from book 1 to book 2 that it no longer made sense to them, and I cut it. And I had it in a leftovers document. And when I got to this character and who he was, I kind of went back to that document and pulled things that I thought might make some sense for him. And sure enough, it worked out.
Is it called Leftovers?
I do. Yeah, I do this thing where if I start a manuscript, I'll start writing. And then immediately after creating that document, I create a document that's called whatever the title is, Leftovers. And anything that I cut out goes straight to the Leftovers document. And I would have one of those for every manuscript that I've ever written, for sure.
That is brilliant.
Yeah, it's fun. I mean, it's, again, that same concept of like, that's the beauty of writing, is like something that didn't work in this story just nestles so perfectly. So Whisper in the Walls, right? Whisper in the Walls. The plot of that book is a plot I have had written, I've tried to write a million times. And then I got to book 2 and Rin and where she was, and I was like, wait a minute, this plot's flawless for this story. And I airlifted it in. And I'm not kidding when I say this. Like, so I turned in a Whisper in the Walls maybe back in, I'm probably not even supposed to say the title, but sorry.
I was just going to interrupt you, but I feel bad interrupting authors. I'm like, Scott, don't. Are you under NDA?
It's good. It's whatever. They won't get mad at me. I feel like they like me.
That is a cool title, though.
A Whisper in the Walls. Yes. I just got like the finalized like cover stuff for it. We've got some other secret stuff that they sent me. So yeah, I got plenty of secrets left in the bank. But Whisper in the Walls, official title announcement. But I turned that in. Exclusive. That's right. Only here. I turned that into my editor, and I've had some painful edits, right? Like Nixia Unleashed, the second book in the Nixia series, I rewrote 97% of that book, right?
Oh, really?
My editor hated that book.
Brutal.
Oh, it was the worst. And I thought it was a pretty good one too. So it was like even more painful to just rip it away. But for Whisper in the Walls, it is the only book, and it's my 12th book I've ever turned into an editor, right? It's the only book I've ever had an editor come back to me and just be like, I don't really know what to change. It's good. I was like, let's do that more often. That's way easier than what we normally been doing. So thankfully, I feel confident about that one. I feel like if you liked A Door in the Dark, you're really going to like Whisper in the Walls.
I have a live question for you. Zoe,
okay.
Did you get a say in the cover?
I did. And a say is like a stretch, right? I got to be like a part of the conversation of like, what are a few things that you think would be a good cover? Like, talk me through this. But I actually think if I looked back through emails, my editor, Kate Prosomer, this was her baby. This was kind of her concept. She was like, what about the wax sway room? And I was like, oh, right. Yes, that's a great idea. The person who like executed the art for this, like previously mostly did like car commercial type stuff, and they destroyed this cover. I mean, just beautiful. And then I'll shout out my publisher because, you know, I was not like a huge fish in their pond when I landed, I wouldn't say, but then like a bunch of stuff happened in house and they got excited about the book and they loved the pitch and they loved the concept and it just kind of kept picking up momentum. And then when I got this cover, anyone who has the in-person cover, like the just printed out one, they did so much extra stuff to this, which every author out there knows is not like par for the course. That's more money. It's a kind thing for them to do. But they like, it's like raised right here. My wife looked at it and she's in branding and like knows all about font. She's like, Scott, they did like 10 different things to this thing. And so I definitely feel like it's a beautiful cover. And most of the time, I'm glad that like I have final say, but I'm glad I didn't have to contribute too much in the process because frankly, they're just way better at it than I am. I don't draw. So like, I'm glad someone who does got on this. It's a beautiful cover. Yeah.
I think it's wonderful. And everybody says that's awesome and that's impressive, and it is. But what I would really like is for a lot of authors to do like their own cover. I'm talking Microsoft Paint, crayons. Can you imagine? That would have been a good one for April 1st.
Mine would have looked like a candle that a third grader had drawn, just like with like some shading
door in the dark.
I have a 5-year-old and I tell my 5-year-old this, and I'm not like just blowing smoke. I'm not just like pretending. I tell him he's better at drawing than me because he is better at drawing than me. And so if I needed to in-house, I'd probably just get him to do it, not me.
Yeah, I advocate for that as well. I think it should be a thing.
Young artist. Get him started young, you know? Get his commission career going.
Okay. Without talking about the big bad, can we talk about the big bad? This is one of the questions, okay? It's written a little bit more eloquently than what I just said.
Yeah.
But in brackets, I put maybe skip if it's a big reveal.
Yeah. Let me think about how.
Do you have a more eloquent way of saying anything about?
I think okay. Let me think. So I think that the first thing I would say is the beauty of my big bad is that you generally just don't see it coming. That's definitely the first beauty of it. And the second beauty, and I think this is what I love the most about this particular thing in the story, is that it's something that builds and continues to grow as it interacts with the group, right? And that, to me, that like slow leveling up, right? The learning process, like seeing something evolve slightly, I find that terrifying, right? I always try to do that. Like Nixia has this. Nixia, there's a scene that I would qualify as horror. It's one of the character deaths in the first book. And that horror scene, one of the things that's so horrible about it, and I think that makes good horror, is the lack of control. When you cannot do anything, when you're helpless, that's a terrifying moment for anyone, right? So I channeled that into the scene. And in this one, I think a big bad, an antagonist, an enemy that can kind of like slowly learn you and hunt you better is terrifying. And so to me, that was definitely something I wanted to channel. Was I just tried to think through, like, what's the worst thing that can happen? What's the worst thing that could follow them through these woods? And that was 100% the right answer.
I agree. But also, can we talk about the second most terrifying thing in the book? And it's when Theo takes his shirt off.
I forgot about that moment.
You forgot about that scene? Are you serious right now?
No. It's so funny. My beta readers like sent me the funniest string of texts when they arrived at that scene, and they all arrived at the scene like almost at the same time. So I just got this flood of messages that were like a mixture of like, I don't know, I think I want a little less, and then someone was like, I need more of this. So it was just like this back and forth of like, how much shirt should come off. Yeah, that is a great it's a great moment. I particularly like that moment. I did have to, it was like a lot of nuanced editing with my writing group for that moment in particular. Yeah.
Nuanced editing. I'm sorry. For anybody who hasn't read the book, and I'm sure there's a couple of people watching who have read the book, if you haven't, You've definitely seen Tamlin edits on TikTok. That's what you're in for.
There you go.
But more noble.
I appreciate that.
We have to. How much shirt should come off? Yeah, I know. This chat is very quickly devolving.
It's going bad. It's going downhill. We've done it again.
That means it's been a good time.
That's right. I think
exactly.
I think we've performed admirably.
I'll have to ask my boss who is watching.
If she could also write a survey for me and how I performed, that'd be great. Appreciate that.
I will get that to you in an official email.
Yeah, thank you. Thank you.
What else can you tell us about A Whisper in the Walls? Are we going to be going back to the academy?
More POV characters is what I'll tell you.
Oh, really? Okay.
And there's 2 additional POV characters, and they're both great, but one of them is my favorite main character I've ever written, ever. And it's not a spoiler to say her name even. So her name is Nevlin Tinvori. And Nevlin Tinvori is just like, she's awesome. She's just such a good character. It's like, it's when you know things are going well when you're like sitting alone in the coffee shop, kind of like giggling a little bit to yourself, like making people uncomfortable. And they're like, "Are you okay?" And I'm like, "I'm just good character. It's a good character here." And so I think I would add that in. There are some new, so not just the formulaic magic that we get in book 1, but there are some instances of magic that are not as formulaic in the world, and they happen sort of like Timmons, that she's an enhancer. There are some other magics, specifically a type of tattoo magic that is like a little bit more unnatural and kind of weird and interesting, and so we'll get some of that. But it is like Count of Monte Cristo, pulling the strings of revenge plots left and right. It's a really fun story.
How does one become a beta reader? Asking for friends.
I mean, it's already done. My editor was the only beta reader for that one. So if you want to be an early reader, I'll just send you an email. Yeah, we'll get you getting.
Thanks, Scott.
Yeah, that's no problem.
Because I have a book hangover now, and that's your fault. So, and entirely your fault, in fact.
I appreciate that. I mean, I didn't have permission to share the title, but I'm sure I have permission to send you the manuscript.
There's no rules in publishing, right?
It feels right. I don't know.
Okay, so to level the playing field, like a month ago, I went on a live with Karina from OwlCrate and my other boss, Sil, who was the general manager, and I almost spilled the secret of the special edition Lee Bardugo set that was just announced. Because I was like, I can say it's a big author. And they were like, Jordan, no. And now the joke internally, I guess, is that I'm the Tom Holland of OwlCrate. So if I'm the Tom Holland of OwlCrate, you are the Tom Holland of authors.
I appreciate that. That's not a bad person to be. I'll be the Tom Holland of authors. That sounds great to me.
We'll get matching t-shirts.
Yeah. Hey, I'll make
Tom Holland's face.
That's right.
Happy release week. What do you hope readers take away from the series? What do you hope they fall in love with?
I hope I know that there are going to be readers who don't like Rin, and that's fine with me. She's not everyone's cup of tea, but I hope that the readers who get her are like all about it and feel like they get to walk hand in hand with her through what is one of the better like stories I've ever gotten to write. And so I also just hope always, I hope you feel transported. I hope you feel like you get your feet set down in a new place and you take a few steps and then like we are humming and you just don't stop moving until you get to the end. And so that's always a goal of mine. I feel like it is my duty to understand that you have a million other things you could do with your life. But if you're choosing to opt into my book and you're opening those first few pages, I want you to feel like you just can't stop. And so that's kind of my hope every time.
I love that. And I wanted to give a shout out to this particular book as well, because if you're playing a reading challenge, this is perfect for the prompt of if it chases you, run.
Oh, it is. That's right. That is perfect. That's a flawless.
I think before the live you had mentioned that your wife, who is a wonderful like designer as well, like does marketing, she did some custom book plates. Where can folks get signed books?
Yeah.
Signed copies of your book?
So anytime you want a personalized book from me, the best way to go about getting a personalized book plate, not book plate, sorry, personalized book is through Quail Ridge Books in Raleigh. I'm going there next week. So actually, like, even if you got them in today, tomorrow, you'd still get your personalized copy. So that's kind of how I always have done personalizations, is through them. And like, you see me like scrolling down, so I'm trying to find the sheet. But these stores, there's a lot of them, so I'm just gonna like rattle them off, and if they're in notes somewhere else, that's great. But I gave like a limited amount to all of these stores. So Adventure Bound Books, Bookmarks NC, Buxton Village Books, Flyleaf Books, and Terabang Books, Little Shop of Stories, Malaprops, One More Page Books, Page 158, Park Road Books, Quail Ridge Books, Read With Me, RJ Julia, The Country Bookshop, Third Place Books, Union Ave Books. So any of those. And I have like you can find the graphic on my Instagram too. But like just a bunch of really great stores that I'm always kind of honored to work with. They have those book plates in kind of a limited amount, but you can always call them up and ask them, or if they're local to you, like just hop in, pay them a visit, kind of thing.
Awesome. Everybody's saying yes in capital. Like, I almost said capital exclamation mark. It's not even Monday yet. I don't.
I'm glad you said that, because I don't know what day it is. What day is today? Today's Sunday, right? Today's Sunday. Yeah, that's right.
You're so kind to me.
Oh, I mostly don't know what month it is, so I'm right there with you. Don't worry.
Thank you for joining us tonight.
Yeah.
We have one more, and the most important question from Zoe is, what's your favorite cookie dough?
Oh, okay. I mean, this is cheating. My wife makes this like unbelievable homemade cookie dough that like your stomach's gonna hurt a lot. Like, it's not good for you, but it's great for you. So I'm an original like Pillsbury person, and my mom famously, like, she would add like a pinch of sea salt to the cookies. So all my cousins in our neighborhood were like, Mrs. Reintgen makes the best cookies. So it's just, yeah, I'm a big fan of the homemade though. The homemade, you can't go too bad with that.
Homemade, they haven't responded yet. I hope it was the right answer for you.
If I got it wrong, I just leave. No, I do want to say thank you to everyone who watched this, and thank you for hosting me. And just it's always an honor to get to talk books and all that. But I just enjoy, genuinely, from the bottom of my heart, you just make me comfortable, and so it's just like a really fun conversation every time we've gotten to chat. So thanks so much, Jordan, for hosting.
You don't have to thank me.
I didn't
chat for an hour. I appreciate that. Thank you. And you're going to be back to talk about A Whisper in the Walls, and maybe we'll have a fun panel that I'm perhaps planning for December.
Yes, sure. We're in.
I think it would be fun to have a repeat of our sci-fi panel.
I'd be down for that. Plus, I gotta get you that Tom Holland shirt, so we'll figure something out.
I will wear that during a panel with you and several other that will be reposted in places. I will, just for you. As long as you wear one too.
I will, yeah.
And then we won't tell anybody.
And we got to start our D&D campaign. So we got a lot of things on the bullet list.
We do. We have a long to-do list, Scott. But thank you for joining me. It's always a pleasure. Thank you to the Nest and everybody rewatching, whether it's here or on YouTube. We appreciate you. Our community is amazing, and it's because of you. Our next author chat is happening Wednesday, April 5th at 8 p.m. Eastern Standard Time, 5 p.m. Pacific. And we will be chatting with best-selling author Suzanne Young about her latest release, In Nightfall. You might have seen her this week on the NBC Nightly News for fun reasons that we're going to talk about next week. But I hope that everybody has a great evening, and bye-bye.